Childhood neglect correlates with impaired adult capacity for close relationships, a survey of 114 non-psychotic psychiatric inpatients found. Dr. Lisa Cohen reports the findings.
We know that childhood maltreatment is a risk factor for many different types of psychiatric disorders. For example, eating disorders, depression, personality disorders, and many others, and also a risk factor for health disorders, physical health disorders. However, the research on the adverse effects of childhood maltreatment has really focused primarily on the more kind of dramatic and visible and physical types of maltreatment, such as sexual abuse and physical abuse. And while this is certainly very important, the base rates of this kind of abuse is not as high as the other kinds that aren't quite as dramatic, such as emotional abuse and neglect. And it's only recently that we've really been paying attention to the impact of emotional abuse and neglect. So we were interested in whether neglect per se had an impact on interpersonal functioning in adults. So whether people who were neglected by their parents as children reported when they were adults that they had more difficult times with interpersonal relationships. We looked at 114 non-psychiatric inpatients. We used two different measures, the multidimensional neglectful behavior scale, which has a total score and 4 subscales: supervisory, cognitive, physical, and emotional neglect. And then we looked at the severity indices of personality problems, which is a self-report questionnaire. And we specifically looked at the relational domain and the scales for enduring relationships, intimacy, and feeling recognized. And what were our findings? Well, basically everything was correlated with everything. So it's a very strong finding that reported history of neglect is associated with difficulties with relationships in adulthood. But one of the things that I found particularly interesting is if you look at that column in red, the enduring relationships was most strongly correlated with the different types of neglect. So what this suggests is that while people who've been neglected report difficult times with relationships in general, they seem to have a specifically difficult time with maintaining relationships above and beyond just engaging in these relationships. So in conclusion, our data links childhood neglect to impaired capacity for close social relationships among non-psychotic psychiatric inpatients, and the deficit seems driven by problems with sustaining relationships more than the ability to engage in close relationships at all. So I think this is something we want to pay attention to with our patients, is not only can they get in relationships, but can they maintain them over time.